Hey everybody, Mr. Din here. This is actually my second recording. The first recording I did, it didn't save for some reason. So I'm kind of starting all over. Um, so when you see the notes later on, I'm kind of already into it. So that will explain what you're gonna see. Okay, first of all, I wanted to say hi, miss you guys. I hope you guys are doing okay wherever you are in LA or around the world. I'm going to share my screen with you right now, and we're going to go over really quickly the agenda. Looks something like this. This is lesson 3. So brain jog 1 is on major organs. This will go on page 42. We're going to talk about a stent. I'm going to show you a video of a stent procedure, and then I'm going to show you when arteries can clog. That disease is called arteriosclerosis. And number 4 is we're going to do a really quick CV system overview explanation. And then finally, you're going to write for me a blood cell story. Here are the instructions in a nutshell. Pretend you are a red blood cell traveling through the cardiovascular system. Where would you go? What stops would you make on your journey? Okay, that's a story. It shouldn't say story, it should say submit. I don't know why I put story. There you go. All right, that's the agenda for today. Pretty easy. Oop, that's not what I want. Here we are. So the brain jog is going to go on page 42, but then we are on these two pages here. Page 44 is called cardiovascular system, and page 45 is called pulmonary and systemic circuits. We're going to talk about our double loop system today, and those are the two loops, pulmonary and systemic circuits. I'm reading right here. Let's write down the goal of the day. Here we go. There are a lot of goals. I'm going to read them out loud. Students understand identification of blood vessels as arteries, capillaries, or veins from the structure of their walls. What that says, can you look at the walls of the blood vessel and determine whether it's an artery, a vein, or a capillary? Number 2, students understand blood flows through tissues in capillaries with permeable walls that allow exchange of materials between cells in the tissues and the blood in the capillary. So we're going to talk about nutrient and gas exchange today on the tissue level. Okay, number 3. Students understand that veins collect blood at low pressure and arteries collect blood at high pressure. Yes, we will discuss a little bit about blood pressure today. Not much, but a little. Number 4, veins have valves to prevent backflow of blood. We're going to talk about vein valves today. And then number 5 is that the heart rate will increase based on how the brain reacts to it. Pretty easy, right? Okay, so I'm going to stop that share. You know what? I just remembered something. I'm going to put this into the agenda. I just remembered that there is a small lab you can do. It's called a pulse lab. That I want to have you guys submit there as well. Just thought about it. I'm glad I did. Okay. So let us dive in, shall we, to our explanation that I started in the other video but never finished. Let me give you it in a nutshell. Are you ready? This is the cardiovascular system overview. 45, IB cohort 6. You guys are my favorite. Cohort number 6, always and forever will be. We started by talking about what is the cardiovascular system at all. Split up the word. Cardio means heart, vascular means vessels. Have you ever heard someone say, oh, I'm going to do a cardio exercise? What they're saying is that I'm going to do an exercise for my heart. Vessels, on the other hand, you've probably heard of these vessels before. Veins, arteries, what's the difference? Well, cardiovascular system combines both the heart and the vessels. We will discuss the difference between veins and arteries in a moment. Our cardiovascular system is a double loop system. Some organisms have a single loop system. So ours have a double loop, 2 cycles, 2 circles, 2 loops. However way you want to think about it, just remember that there are 2. So that's a really basic overview. And then we dove into drawing the heart in the middle. We made a little box over here, kind of just leave it on this side because I don't know if we're going to have time to talk about it today. And then we drew 2 lungs, and then we drew tissues and organs in a little box down here. Next point. We enter the cycle as a red blood cell coming out of the heart. And when the blood exits the heart, it uses the largest artery of the body. That artery is called aorta. So that was a vocab word, aorta, largest artery of the body. We had not yet discussed what is an artery at all. So we defined it. An artery is a vessel carrying blood away from the heart. The way to remember is artery starts with the letter A for away. Artery carries blood away from the heart. So as you can see, the arrows I've put into the aorta are moving away from the heart. The arrow indicates the flow of blood. Then my next point was the arteries will split off into smaller arteries because the blood flow is way too strong. There's not enough room for the red blood cells to drop everything off that they need to. Okay. It would be very inefficient if an Amazon truck driver on the 405 freeway just threw your package across the freeway and hope that it gets to you. Okay. That would be very inefficient. So I think in the last video, I made a little metaphor. The metaphor is imagine the aorta and your major arteries as the freeways, the 405, the 101, the 10 freeway. Well, in order for someone to get to your home, they got to exit the freeway. They have to take a main road. Then the road has to split into a smaller road. Those smaller roads will split into even smaller residential roads. And those residential roads, we haven't named yet. But as you can see, the artery is very big, then a little smaller, then a little smaller than that. And finally, we have caught up. Not bad. Okay. Now I'm going to draw the vessels so small that you can't really even see them. They kind of just branch off like this. These as well. Put these over here. They kind of branch off like this. These are microscopic, by the way. You're not able to see them with your own naked eyes. Look something like that. These are called capillaries. Capillaries are smallest blood vessel. And the capillaries have a very special feature to them. They have permeable walls. Another way to think about permeable walls is they have doors. They have doors to open up to stuff. Okay, so underneath tissues and organs, I'm going to draw for you what a capillary will look like. But I'm going to draw it like a little pipe. Now keep in mind that all these drawings are not drawn to scale, okay? And in this pipe, it's so small, it's about the width of one red blood cell. That's a red blood cell. That's another red blood cell. That's a red blood cell. The red blood cells kind of march through the capillary in single file. That's how small a capillary is. Single file, red blood cells, there you go. Okay. When the red blood cells are allowed to march single file through the capillary, the walls of that capillary, like I said, have little doors inside of them. The doors will open up to the cells of the tissues and the organs. So I'm going to draw for you the cells of the tissues and the organs like this. Here's a cell. Here's a cell. Here's a cell. There are many ways you can think about individual cells. I always use the metaphor as each one of them is like a little child who needs food and water and to take away their waste. You can also think about them as a home. These are the Amazon truck drivers and they're dropping off some packages to you. And then I guess the difference here is you give them your trash. There are many ways you can kind of think about this conceptually. All right, here's what happens. The red blood cells have packages to drop off. Each cell is going to receive a package of O2 gas, that's oxygen, and some monomer foods. In exchange, the cells are going to drop off the waste that it doesn't need. So what waste does it have? It has carbon dioxide gas and other waste products. So there are a few ways that you can think about this. I think it's much easier to think about it from the perspective of the blood. Okay, imagine you're one of these red blood cells. Okay, over here is Karen, this is Donna, this is Emily, and over here is Joseph. You are an individual one. You are dropping off your O2 and you're receiving the waste from the cells. Alrighty, so from your perspective, this is the stuff you lost and this is the stuff you gained. You lost O2 and you gained CO2. Now I'm going to flip it. All right, so don't get confused. If the first part made sense to you, great. I'm going to flip it. From the perspective of the cells, you gained O2 and food, and you lost CO2 and waste. So it's just flip-flopping. I always like it from the perspective of the blood. I think it's easier to understand. It's worth mentioning here, a different point now, that we're not talking about 3 cells. It's not just 3 cells that need O2 and food. We're talking billions of cells, billions of children, billions of homes to provide food, water, and O2. We can title this process gas exchange at tissues. That's what happens, gas exchange at the tissues. Okay, it's worth mentioning here. Have we completed one loop yet? No. We're not back at the heart yet. We began exiting the heart. We're not back there yet. So we got to get back there. Let's do it. The capillaries, those same capillaries that came from here, will go here now. And they will form up like this. See what I've done here? They formed up just like the arterioles over here. and the blood flow will resume in this direction. Because the blood doesn't go anywhere, okay? The Amazon truck drivers, they just drop off the stuff, pick up the waste, and then move along, single file. Those capillaries will return to form other vessels, but just to make it 100% clear, these are the same capillaries. Okay, so this tube connects to this tube. They're all the same pipes. Okay. When the capillaries form into larger vessels, these are called venules. Let me write these over here. Venules, Venules. These are smaller veins. Arterioles are smaller arteries. Venules are smaller veins. And when the venules group up, they will form, you guessed it, the veins. So I'm going to draw the vein. Let me zoom out here. I'm going to draw the vein cascading up this direction and then meeting at the heart. Inside the veins, I'm going to put these right there, right there, right there, and right there. I'm going to take my purple. I'm going to draw some arrows to indicate direction of the blood flow. It's purple for a reason. Do not draw this in red. Okay. So let's define veins, shall we? Arteries are vessels carrying blood away from the heart. What do you guys think veins are? Vessels carrying blood toward the heart. Makes sense, no? Veins carry blood to the heart. Arteries carry blood away from the heart. Okay. At this point, the blood is moving quite slowly, because it has a certain velocity. It's got a certain speed coming out of the heart right here. It's moving pretty fast. By the time it reaches the venules, it's moving very slowly, okay? So arteries carry blood at high pressures. We'll talk more about blood pressure in a different lesson. Veins, on the other hand, carry blood at low pressure. So what, Mr. Din? It explains why the veins have these stops here. Because the low pressure blood has a tendency to go backwards. Think about a bowling ball. You roll a bowling ball up a hill, and at first, it's got enough velocity from your arms that it moves in one direction. But as the bowling ball loses velocity and the pressure of the bowling ball goes down, it's gonna want to roll backward. outwards. And we don't want that in the veins. So here, these little V's, vein valves. Vein valves prevent backflow of blood. Imagine trying to roll a bowling ball up a hill. Gosh, sounds like a Greek torture. Okay. Do you guys see the first loop here? We've just completed it. Check this out. Started at the heart, exit out of aorta, into all the arteries, into arterioles, with the gas exchange at the tissues, and then back to the heart through the veins, the venules, and past the vein valves. That's one loop. Swish, 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 swish. That's one loop, okay? One way around the racetrack. Okay, what are we going to call this loop? This loop reaches all the systems of the body. It reaches them all the billions of cells, all the systems of the body. So let's name it after maybe the systems of the body. How about that? We call this the systemic circuit. Systemic circuit. See? System, systemic. This, you guys have probably seen this word, systemic racism, right? All around the systems of society. Systemic, that's what that word means. Here in this context, systemic means all around the system of the body. The systemic circuit can be defined as the loop of vessels feeding all cells. You can think of it that way. Remember, I told you there was a double loop, so there's got to be one other loop. Have you guys figured it out yet? Maybe you're thinking about it and you already got it. The other loop has to replenish the cells going through the blood, because over here it lost all the O2 and the food, and it gained all this waste. It's got to get rid of the waste and regain oxygen. Where do you regain oxygen? You regain it from the lungs. So the other loop looks something like this. Other loop like that. This kind of pains me a little bit because it's not quite right, but I'll fix it. It's actually something like this. I should just draw correctly next year. There you go. Sorry, I had to erase this little part there. The other loop, the blood from the heart has to go to the lungs in order for the lungs to replenish the O2 and get rid of the CO2. So let me zoom in here. Again, the arteries will split off and form capillaries like this. And those capillaries will come back oxygen rich back into the heart like this. Back into the heart like this. Okay, let me say that and write down these notes here, okay? The second loop has to replenish the O2 and get rid of the waste. So how it does that is that these arteries will split off again into arterioles, and then the capillaries release CO2 and regain oxygen gas. So it's just like down here, except the opposite. Instead of losing O2, you're gaining O2. And instead of gaining CO2, you're losing it. So let me draw that for you. It might make a bit more sense. The O2, let me draw for you. Here's your pipe. I'm going to draw half of it in purple and the other half of it in red. Let me be very precise here. Here's a red blood cell. Here's a red blood cell. And the flow of blood is moving in that direction, huh? Okay. What is going in and what is coming out? Going into the red blood cell now is oxygen gas from the air. And coming out of the red blood cell is CO2. So O2 is gained from the perspective of the blood, and CO2 is lost from the perspective of the blood. You may notice that there is a color change. And yes, when the blood is bright red, it's got a bunch of O2 in it. When the blood is kind of purplish, it doesn't have O2 in it. If you've ever donated blood before, you notice the blood is a purple color because they take blood, guess what, from a vein. They don't take it from an artery. It's too dangerous. This is gas exchange in the lungs. Down here is gas exchange in the tissues. Up here is gas exchange in the lungs. They're inverses of each other. This loop, out of the heart, back into the heart, out of the heart, back into the heart, is named after the lungs, but we can't call it the lung circuit. That doesn't sound very good. Do you guys know what the word lungs is in Spanish? Obviously, you can't answer. It's pulmones. So I'm going to write it down here. So the circuit is called the pulmonary circuit. See? Pulmones, pulmonary. Oh, the words just make so much sense. The pulmonary circuit is the loop to regain O2. That's what pulmonary circuit is. When do we utilize these two circuits, everybody? every time the heart pumps, and every time you take a breath. Every breath you take, every move you make. You know that song? Okay, let's do a summary, shall we? We're at 30 minutes. I can do these last two ideas on Zoom tomorrow. Cardio means heart, vascular means vessels. We are diving into each one of the systems. That in this one involves the heart and the blood vessels. Vessels meaning veins and arteries and capillaries. Our bodies utilize something called the double loop system. One loop goes from the heart to the tissues and then back to the heart. The second loop goes from the heart to the lungs and then back to the heart. The first loop is called the systemic circuit, involving the arteries, the arterioles, and gas exchange at the tissues. Then they also involve the venules, the vein valves, and then veins moving back to the heart. That's called the systemic circuit, all the way around the system. The pulmonary circuit is different. Its purpose is to replenish the blood with O2. How does it do it? It's got to go to the lungs. The lungs are where the O2 is, so the blood's got to go there. Blood goes there, changes color back to red, and then back to the heart. We name the circuit after the lungs, called the pulmonary circuit, pulmones. And that, ladies and gents, is a little overview of the double loop system. We haven't yet discussed some of the finer details, but I fear maybe we've gone a little bit too far today. I think that should be enough, considering my last video didn't save. So we're at 32 minutes. If you guys have any questions for me, please feel free to ask. I'm going to leave a bit of instruction for your blood cell story. I am expecting you guys to use all the vocabulary words, all the circuits, the gas exchange, all that stuff. I'm going to be looking for that. So I think that's the end of my video. Miss you guys. Bye-bye.